So my apologies once again, not being able to share the book on the screen. But we are now in part 2, chapter 6 of the Medium's book, the chapter that deals with visual manifestations. And we done it on the topic of the theoretical essay of apparitions, in which Kardec gives a synopsis of what is it, how is it, and why is it that the spirits choose to appear to us. The readings that we're going to have read here now, it is applicable for any and all types of spiritual apparitions. You remember that we saw last week the spirits may appear to us in three basically different ways, and each one of them may be quite complex, but most simple happens all the time, every night for all of us, is during our dreams. It's a normal state. It's not any kind of trance. We all dreams, and while dreaming, we are able to, with our petty spirit or spiritual body, distance ourselves from the physical body that is at rest. And again, should happen only at rest, when the physical body is at rest, and we're able to go and have experiences in the spiritual dimension. Another way is through some kind of trance, include the mediumistic trance. So there is a seeing medium that we will see spirits. And the last way is through physical manifestations that requires a medium of physical phenomena where is able to donate ectoplasm that a spirit will use some kind of cover its own perispirits and renders itself visible to all of us. What you're going to read now here in terms of visual manifestations applies for all kinds of, all three of them, okay? So if someone asks, oh, is this a physical phenomena or is this a mediumistic phenomena? What we're reading here is applicable for all of them pretty much equally, with some variations, of course. Okay, we are now on item 104. It's my book would be page 188.
Mine is 155, Elmo.
Nice.
Yes, isn't that wonderful?
But again, it's part 2, chapter 6, item 104. Does everybody have it? We're going to go slow. We're going to give everybody time.
Okay.
And for those who doesn't have the book, we will read slow. And any questions, please, we can stop. You can stop us at any moment, okay?
Yeah, Elmo?
Everybody good?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go.
Okay. 104. A spirit who desires and who is actually able to appear sometimes assumes an even more defined form with all the appearances of a solid body, to the point of displaying a perfect illusion and leading us to believe that we are dealing with an actual corporeal being. In some cases and under certain circumstances, an apparition's tangibility can become real, meaning that we can touch and handle it and feel its resistance and heat as if it were a living body. Nevertheless, such characteristics do not prevent the apparition from vanishing as quickly as a flash of lightning. In these cases, its presence is not only verified with the eyes, but with the touch as well. If we could attribute the occurrence of a simple visual apparition to illusion or kind of delusion, there can be no more doubt when we can hold and feel it, and when it can hold and hug us. However, tangible apparitions are the rarest. Nevertheless, those which have appeared of late under the influence of a few powerful mediums and which have been completely authenticated by blameless witnesses prove and explain the historical records involving persons who have reappeared after death with all the appearances of reality. Moreover, as we have already pointed out, in spite of how extraordinary such phenomena might seem, they lose all their extraordinary character when we know about the way in which they are produced and when we understand that, far from representing a derogation from natural laws, they only display a new application of them.
Okay, thanks. So as, again, this is a synapse of things that you already saw, so it's a little bit of repetitive, okay? So in order to manifest a visual manifestation of a spirit, a few things are required. One of them, the spirit must want to do it, must desire to do it, okay? Must have the know-how, and more important, must have some kind of permission. Okay, and I'd say some kind of permission because there is always someone, a guide and inspire us, even if you reject that idea, if you don't want that idea, but we are not free to do whatever you want anytime we want, especially when you are less evolved at our level. So there is a need of some kind of permission for spirits to render themselves visible. And as we studied already, this apparition, that vision, one, the spirit will present itself in a way that it can be recognized with the malleability of the perispirit responding to the desire of the mind or the spirit. It is able to reshape itself according to the desire of the mind. Again, the example, if my grandmother going to present herself to me, she needs to present herself in a way that I would recognize her as a senior person, the way she was when I interact with her. If she chooses to live in her spiritual life as someone in her, when she was in her 20s on the last incarnation, because usually we will retain the appearance of the very last incarnation in a way that we are more comfortable with. Okay? If my grandmother chooses to have her normal appearance in the spiritual world in her, let's say, 20s, and she show up to me in her 20s, I may not recognize her. She would have to present to me somewhere on her 60s or so, and she will be able to do that almost naturally once she connects with me and understand that our experience of grandson, grandmother is with that appearance. She will mold her perispirit through the desire of her mind, the way that I could recognize her. Now, she may be able to appear to me in a very vaporous, undefined way, according to many things. One, that's what she desires. Two, that's what she's able to produce. Two, that's what I am able to visualize. Or she may present to me with absolutely definition, with even the most smallest details completely visible and clear, and I could see it perfectly. So much so that in some cases there is a tangibility. We all dreams, you all remember dreams, and most of our dreams, we interact with the individual, but the contact, the physical contact, very often is not there. Very often it's not there. Sometimes it is, because the spirit has the ability to make itself tangible, palpable. It can happen during a mediumistic phenomenon in which a medium feels that he is able to touch the perispirit, perispirit to perispirit, perispirit to perispirit of a spirit. And in physical phenomena, there are some apparitions that in which the spirit is completely touchable. When Chico Xavier was doing his physical phenomena in Pedro Leopoldo, there is a report of some incarnated spirit who was able to touch the clothes of Emmanuel. He used to dress like the Roman senator. Most of the time that he appears dressed as the Roman senator that he was, Tullius Lentulus. And individuals documented they are able to touch his clothes, feel the material of the clothes that he was wearing over there. Those are physical phenomena. But it has a degree of variation. What does it do? It gives another component of confirmation. Now, not only visual, but also tactile. Is it important? Personally, to me, no. But for some people, it may be important. But scientifically, if we are studying the perispirit in a more scientific way, then it becomes extremely important. If I want to understand the perispirit in its highest degree of complexity, then the characteristic or the attribute of tangibility is important. So how do you prove that the spirit has such an ability? By doing the experiment, by touching. Then it becomes important in a purely scientific way. But on a more philosophical way of belief, the existence of the spirits and its properties, it's not really significant. By scientifically speaking, it becomes scientific important. If I say that the spirit has the ability of tangibility, then scientifically I have to document, I have to prove it and document it. If I'm able or not. Okay. Extremely rare, of course. You can imagine the degree of concentration and elevation of the energies in that ambient for the spirit to be able to accumulate such a higher degree of not only quantity of material, but quality of material to render itself visible with such a degree of details, including tangibility, has to be extremely, extremely, extremely rare. But it does happen sometimes, and let's say in a group like where Chico Xavier was performing those things, it was a very high quality of energies. Also in this place in Rio, where they still performs spiritual surgeries, there is a lot of physical phenomena happening over there, and there is a lot of materialization of spirits that at some point they are also tangible, but again, extremely rare. Okay? 105?
Okay, 105. By its very nature and its normal state, the perispirit is invisible. The same may be said of countless fluids that we know to exist, but which we have never seen. But like certain fluids, it can undergo modifications that render it visible, whether by a sort of condensation or by a change in its molecular arrangement. This is when it can appear to us in a vaporous form. Condensation, we must not take this word literally. We only use it due to the lack of another and as a simple instrument of comparison. Can be sure that the perispirit acquires the properties of a solid, intangible body, but it can instantaneously return to its ethereal and invisible state. We can understand this process by comparing it to steam, which can go from invisibility to a mist, then to a liquid, and finally to a solid, and vice versa. These diverse states of the perispirit, however, are due to the will of the spirit itself and not to physical or outside causes, as is the case with our gases. A spirit can appear to us when it places its perispirit in the state necessary to become visible. A simple desire is not enough to produce the effect because the modification of the perispirit could only occur when it combines its own fluids with the specific fluid of a medium. This combining is not always possible, which explains why it is uncommon for spirits to make themselves visible. Consequently, it is not enough for the spirit to want to appear or for a person to want to see it. The combining of the fluids of both is required, which means that there must be a kind of affinity between them, and also that the emission of the medium's fluid must be quite abundant in order to bring about the perispirit's transformation. There are probably other conditions that we do not yet know about. Finally, the spirit must have received permission to appear to a person, which is not always granted. And if so, only in certain circumstances for reasons that we are not yet able to ascertain.
Okay, so what I like in this passage from Kardec is that like in the first part of his story, he analyzes a lot of things in this mediumistic phenomenon of operation of spirits that are way beyond our comprehension yet, that we do not know, and we don't have words to express things properly. We need to borrow words from our physical science, such as condensation of fluids. Well, we know very well that the apparition that of spirits require uh, at least three types of fluids, and I say at least because that's what we know so far, right? Something from the medium, something from the spirit itself, and something from nature itself. Okay, energy of point zero. If you remember when you studied that thing in the physical phenomena in the past. Okay, likely is another energy that is used, that is kind of omnipresent, that is everywhere, even at the absolute zero, there is that energy there. So something that could be used by spirit. Okay, so but the manipulation of all those three elements, we could say that they use those elements and condense those elements to make the perispirits visible, which in its nature, it's not visible to us. But then he goes on and say that a few things must be in order for that to take place. For one thing, the affinity of the medium and the spirit. That's the word affinity should always bring back when you study mediumship. That affinity must always be there, and that affinity not only or definitely not of moral affinity, but even the organic affinity is almost like It's a bad comparison, but I'm gonna use anyway. Like if you need a transfusion, you have to make a cross match. You have to be compatibility of the one giving blood and one receiving blood. Those bloods must be compatible, or you have a bad reaction. Here, if there is not that affinity, that compatibility, they're not going to be a phenomenon. They're not going to be a reaction, so to say. They're not going to be a phenomenon. It's not going to happen. Two, they must have the desire of the spirit to make it happen. And three, most important, very important, the permission, as you already said that before. But more important, what Kardec puts over here is that there are things that we do not understand very well yet. Okay, 106, questions?
Okay, 106. Another property of the perispirit is the penetrability inherited to its ethereal nature. No type of matter can obstruct it. It can pass through anything as easily as light passes through transparent objects. Hence, there are no means of preventing spirits from entering a place. They can visit prisoners in their cells as easily as they can visit someone in the middle of an open field.
Okay, so another characteristic, another attribute of perispirits is the penetrability, is the ability to pass through dense matter, as we know. And as we know, the dense matter is not all that dense anyway. There's a lot of space in a wall, right, between the molecules of wall. Our science demonstrates that to us now. And there is no limit to where a spirit can and cannot go, based, of course, on the matter. Okay, the spirit may not be able to go someplace because of its inferior moral evolution, or because it's not allowed by a superior spirit to go somewhere. But there is nothing that would stop a spirit to cross a wall, fire, water, anything that it may think in terms of matter that could stop a spirit. That does not exist. A perispirit can cross to everything because it has the attribute of the penetrability. Okay, let's continue.
7. Apparitions during the awakening state are not rare, nor do they comprise a novelty. They have occurred throughout history, which offers us a large number of such cases. However, without having to resort to the past, they have frequently been encountered in our own times. Many people have seen them and have at first taken them for what convention has called hallucinations. They are especially common in cases where persons have died somewhere far away and have come to visit relatives and friends. They often do not have a clear objective, but we can state that spirits who appear in this way are generally drawn to it to so out of sympathy. If we would examine our memories, we would find that there are few people who have not heard of incidents of this kind, and the authenticity no longer be held in doubt.
Okay. So this deals with the notion that we are all mediums. The majority of us are not ostensive mediums, but we all have some degree of ability to interact with the spiritual world. And we all will experience, most of us at least, that at one point in our lives that you have a glimpse at least of seeing an spirit. Of course, it's in the perispirit of the spirit, right? We all will experience something like that, and Kardec says over here, it's more common than we would like to accept, to admit. You don't want to. We don't want it to be labeled as crazy, as we want to be able as mystical or mythical. We don't want to be able as someone doing voodoo out there. So if it does happen to most of us, we stay quiet. But especially during death of a loved one, it has been reported that that loved one has presented itself and to say goodbye or to say, I'm here, I'm okay. And most of us will experience sometimes again the definition, the quality of that apparitions may vary from very vaporous and ill-defined to precisely defined and anything in between. But it's not also rare. It happens. Most of us will have, if you live long enough, an opportunity to experience some phenomena like that. In our ability of mediums not ostensive, we will have the opportunity to interact with the spirits. We will be paying attention. That's a different story. And that's again, that's not during dreams. Okay, God, that make sure they embassy during awakening state, being awake and have these experiences. If it have not happened to us ourselves, perhaps we know of someone who are able to relate to that. Questions, comments?
Hey,
Yep.
so how can one tell the difference from, I mean, let's go to the one extreme. On, let's say, the operation of the spirit that, not vapors, very defined, that you can touch and everything. How can one tell the difference from a person if you see it? Because you might, walking in the street and, bumping a spirit and don't even know it's a spirit, right?
Yeah, it would be very, very difficult if that was the case. But usually when those so defined definition happens, it is in a kind of environment where we'd expect that to happen, expect to see it happening, and then it happening, you're already expecting it to happen. So there is a session of apparition of spirits, a sexual or physical phenomenon or something like that. So you will see it. And for most mediums, they will be in some state of trance that you also understand that he is in a state of trance. There is clairvoyance, so it's a serious problem, I imagine, of individuals who see spirits, but most of the time it's in a more vague, not so proper definition. They learn how to differentiate. For some mediums, this is a problem. Divaldo tells the story of when he went to visit um, some friends in the city of Goiânia, and he goes at the entrance of the house, and he sees the dog, and he says that no, he don't want to go there. The dog is loose, and it's a big dog. He's afraid to go through. And the lady said, "Well, the dog died a week ago." And he's seen the dog over there as a real dog, and he was scared of going crossing the area there because of the dog. Chico Xavier also at the end of his life, he also had a hard time distinguish incarnate from discarnate. Many encounters that he was talking to three ladies, and that he knew all three of them, and only very long in the conversation that they realized that in reality, it was just one incarnate, though the two was discarnate. Those had already discarded quite some time ago, and he could clearly, talking to the three of them, I think it seemed all three of them as the same. For Chico, for Divaldo, no, they are well trained. It's okay for them. For us, it would be extremely difficult to do something like that. You're right. But usually, when those apparitions happens, is we are expecting to happen, so you know that will that will happen, or you'll be someone that you already know that is already discarnate, and we will be able to identify as a spirit because you know that person is no longer in an incarnate phase of their existence. If I see my grandmother, if I see my mother, I know there is an apparition because I know they are discarnate. They could be a problem. And apparently some mediums, non-educated, with a very ostensive mediumship, suffer those problems, not understanding what they have, their ability that they have. That is actually one of the reasons that a lot of people seek a spiritist center. Can you get rid of this thing that I have? And we have to say, no, you can educate the thing that you have, but you have it. You must educate it.
And another question, aside from deformities or anomalies on the first spirit, that obvious that, let's say a medium can see, um, as an example, on the No Solar, there was a spirit with Andrea Luiz, I forgot the name, was showing a lady with dark spots on her perisprit. That was more of a moral thing, not like a physical on the perisprit thing. That they could see it, that something was off. Uh, is a medium or someone that's able to see spirits as well able to see those kind of moral imperfection on the perisprit of the spirit?
Yeah, if you remember in that book, when that lady shows at the gate, and the spirit and Luis sees her there, and he's with compassion, say, why don't you open the door? Why not let her in? She was outside of the gate, right? And then also say, look very carefully. Look, and then he was able to look very carefully and see those things. Not even André Luiz was able to perceive those moral defects being expressed in the perispirit. Aulus already had that intellectual moral advance. He sees immediately. So most of us won't see those moral defects being expressed in the perispirit. That is reserved for more evolved spirits. André was able to see only after Aulus says, pay good attention, look careful, concentrate. And then he was able to see, if you remember the book.
And that's something that the spirit is not showing. It's on the perispirit and it cannot hide from it, right?
Yes, it's a scar, so to
Yeah.
say, that she placed on herself every time she committed an abortion. That scar is there. She cannot get, she would have to go through experiences to repair the mistake in order to get rid of those scars, so to say. Again, the scar is a metaphor, okay? The word, I'm using the word over here, but it's not really scar, it's just a metaphor. It's like, it's there, and it will only with reparation of the mistakes that it will disappear. But
The
again,
spirit,
not everybody will see it. Not even the Luis there at that time could not see it at all.
and is the spirit self able to see those moral things on him or herself?
Likely not. Likely not. Um, that would be actually pretty mean of the divine laws if the spirits are able to see those things. And as we see in our spiritist meeting, spirits coming in, and they don't, like we ourselves, we don't see our ugly very often. You like to see the uglies in somebody else's defects of somebody else, but you don't see our own. As Christ said, we see the speck in somebody's else's eyes. You don't see the, what is the word? The trunk in our own eyes. So likely a more less evolved spirit, we won't see those things.
Hmm.
Because again, these are all moral qualities, are moral defects being expressed in the perispirit that more evolved spirits are able to see clearly. And perhaps us, if Aulos or if Calderaro and those more evolved spirits come to us and see, Elmo, Renato, you can actually do it, but you have to concentrate very, very profoundly and look very carefully. Maybe we'll be able to have a glimpse and see it. What for Calderaro or for Aulos, for the more evolved spirits, they can see it clearly without an effort.
Thank you.
Sure. Now you come to the part of the globular spirits.
Okay, 108.
To me, yes, to me, the great significance of what we're going to read here now is what I always say is that leave things of a spiritual nature as a diagnosis of exception. After you rule out all the possible physical explanations and everything else is ruled out, you go to your check mark. No, was not that, was not the wind, it was not an animal, was not A, was not B, was not C, was not D. You run out of options, then you may consider it to be a spiritual manifestations. Okay, and Kardec is so careful in this passage over here to talk about this, what he calls globular spirits, so many ways that we may see things out there that only we are seeing, other people are not seeing, that we may label as spirits. In reality, is just pure physical or biological, biophysical processes that we experience, that we may experience. But because you already have a mind full of mysticism, full of uneducated spirituality, we start saying, "Oh, I'm seeing this, I'm seeing that, I see this," and here Kardec goes through a list of physical things that happens, and unfortunately, people have come to him basically and say that they are seeing spirits and are seeing more than one spirits, and we see here very classical examples of mistakes that people make, think that they see spirits, in reality they just experience a physical or biological process.
Okay, so begin.
Okay, please.
108. To the foregoing considerations, we shall add an examination of certain optical effects that have given rise to the strange theory of globular spirits. Often, the air is not entirely clean, and at such times, the currents of aeriform molecules and their heat-produced movement can become perfectly visible. Some people have actually taken this phenomenon to be masses of spirits fluttering around in the air. It is enough only to mention this theory in order to refute it. Nonetheless, there is another kind of illusion that is no less bizarre and against which we must also be on guard. The watery fluid in the eye sometimes contains specks that are barely perceptible and which have lost some of their transparency. These specks are like opaque objects suspended in the fluid, whose movement they follow.
Yeah.
They appear as tiny discs, barely 1/16th of an inch in diameter, but augmented by refraction, which appear to float in the air some distance away. We have seen people take these discs to be spirits who follow them everywhere. In their enthusiasm, they see figures in nuances of the iridescence. This is about as rational as seeing the figure of a man on the moon. It would only take a simple observation on their part to bring themselves back to reality.
Thanks. Okay, so here's how careful Kardec is when dealing with spiritism, with dealing with mediumship, with dealing with we seeing spirits, the necessity to really rule out all the possibilities before we um, so quickly address what we're seeing as being apparition of spirits, as being spirits. He says in one of his magazines that someone came complaining with him. There was a legion of spirits was following him all the time, everywhere that he goes, even in his house. The legion of spirits was following him, and they give this round appearance, and that makes Kardec call it the globular spirits. It's almost sarcastic. It's like Kardec is almost being sarcastic here. But people have actually come to him with those ideas. One of the possibilities, what he calls the uh, aeriform molecules. And all of us, especially areas in the summer when it's hot, it's heat, and especially areas of pollutions, we see things floating in the air. I remember when I was driving in Texas in July, and it was 113 degrees, extremely hot. And I see so many things floating in the air that I start to get scared. Is something wrong with me? Something wrong with my eyes? And then I asked my daughter and my son, no, we are seeing the same thing. And my son was very quick. It's just because of the heat. It's so intense that it bounces on the asphalt, it goes up, that you're actually seeing the movement of molecules in the air. Is so hot it was when the light bounces on the asphalt, it comes back up. For someone more mystical, they call, oh, seeing the spirits, are seeing this, are seeing that. Another thing that Kardec uses here is people has the so-called floaters in the eyes. You know, it's the eyes is surrounded by a vitreous fluid, humor. And that fluid has particles. Has particles in that. Sometimes some of those particles clump together, and when they couple together, it becomes visible to your eyes. Nobody else can see it. It's a simple biological phenomenon. People will say, oh, I'm seeing those globular, those round spirits. They're always with me. Every time that I open my eyes and I look, they are with me. If I look to the right, they are on the right. If I look to the left, they are to the left. That's because when you do your eye movement, those particles will move with the movement of the eyes. And some more mystical, we'll say they are seeing spirits, because we know that the spirits may have different shape and forms, and people would address all those physical, biological, normal phenomena to be seeing spirits. And I really sense is just the ability of some things to change color in accordance to the angle that we see it. You know, butterfly wings, the inside of some shells Depends of how the light hits it in that angle, you see it in a different color, right? Some people have addressed that as a spirit that is creating those things, creating those change of colors, when in reality is a natural phenomenon, is a physical phenomenon, that the way the light hits an object, it will reflect one or another color. You know, the white is a combination of all colors, right? And depends on the angle, some of the colors will separate from the whole when you see it. Bluish from one side, reddish from the other side, and it's completely natural. But someone who already with uneducated spirituality will address to be seeing spirits, or if those phenomena are being caused by spirits.
Do we have any other explanation besides heat to see those kind of things?
Which things?
Those discs or small things? Let's say that you're inside your house, sitting in your bedroom, and then you start to see those things. And you already rule out, you already went on the eye doctor, you're fine, you're good. And then you still see those things.
Well, the first question I ask would be, why discs? Why little round shapes? Why would I think that round globular discs are spirits? What would lead me to the first to come to my mind think there's a spirit? The first thing I should go, I gotta go see an ophthalmologist. You know, I've seen those little things in front of my eyes. I've seen those things. The first thing that I need to do is go consult with ophthalmologist, and likely they will diagnose with something if you are really seeing. My wife sees the so-called floaters time to time. You know, things are floating in front of her eye. Goes to the doctor. No, it's normal. Don't worry about. Don't do anything about it. But if you're seeing discs, if you're seeing things of that nature, you should consult an ophthalmologist. Why would one imagine that floating round things are spirits? If special for us that you know the spirits will present with a perispirit with a human form. Although they can present a different form, why they choose to appear to us a little disc, little dots, little tiny balls in front of us? It's kind of not very logical.
Perhaps you're not able to see, right? Perhaps, as you said, it's not the spirit itself that's not showing completely. It's you, a person that has the know-how or the ability to see the I mean the spirit in a full
Yeah, but
body.
when I say with an ill-defined shape and form, but it's still being very ill-defined, but something that makes you think of a human shape somehow, something that resembles you of a human shape somehow. If I start seeing dots in front of my eyes, disc in front of my eyes, I'm going to consult an ophthalmologist first thing.
Mm.
Or you not think of spirits at all, basically.
Mm.
Yeah, because how about when you have like a swinging moods, you have chills, all these things that are not external. You know, there's no air, there's nothing falling from the shelf. It's on your body. You're feeling those things, and you know you're fine. Your experience, on your body, and one can assume, oh, because most people might think, oh, maybe there's someone close to me. That's why I feel the chills. I see some little dots on the air. Um, I felt like crying, my heartbeat, accelerate, and those kind of things that you feel on yourself. Would one attribute that to spirits, or we have to keep on physical conditions?
I wouldn't at all attribute to spirits. I'm feeling chill, the spirit near me. Why? Is the spirit coming from Alaska and brought a pile of snow? I don't know. Why? Why do I think the spirit gives me chills? I don't make any relationship of feeling chills and presence of spirits. If I'm feeling melancholic, if I'm feeling sad, am I going to attribute to the spirits? No, not at all. I like to find out what is making me melancholic, what is making me feel like crying. This might be something with me first before I think of spirits around me. Again, exclusion. I will rule out everything. But then again, this is me. I would not address none of my physical, emotional experiences to the presence of spirits at all.
I like that.
Now, let's assume that it's around the birthday of my mom, and I'm thinking a lot of my mom. And on the day they would celebrate her birthday, I'm keeping thinking of her. Can she come and visit me? Can I kind of feel her presence? Yes. But then I'm associated with a sequence of things that may lead my mom to come and say, hey, yeah, I know you're thinking of me. I'm thinking of you too. When in a special situation, it's her birthday, a day that I'll be thinking of her all day. Maybe I have a feeling of her presence. Yeah, it makes some kind of sense, but not out of the blue like that. Oh, I have a chill right now. Spirits have just passed by me. I heard that quite a few times. To me, it's a bunch of nonsense. Things must have a reason to happen, have some, again, if that you have to create some kind of association for me to think that there's a spirit over here. If not, it's me. I'm feeling melancholic. I'm having some chills. I have to check why I'm having some chills. Maybe I should put a sweater on. I don't know. But I would not be thinking of spirits.
So, on that line of questioning, so going one step further, not physical, let's say I'm sorry, I'm asking you a lot of latitude on this subject. I know if I'm too off, we can
fine. That's fine.
If I'm too off, we can just come here. But for example, the intuition part of things, because I always attribute intuition, not the intuition like oh, don't go there, don't do this, call someone, this kind of light intuition. I always attribute to spirit. And but I mean, how can one rule out those kind of things that no, it's just me, or it's just me thinking, it's not something that's coming from the spirits as well?
On that topic, that's a little bit different. First of all, I would not even consider trying to rule out because we're not going to be able to do so. We can rule out when we know ourselves pretty well, when you know the limit of ability to think of some line of thinking, and all of a sudden we go to that line of thinking that is completely different of our way of thinking, that is completely different of way that you usually do things. Okay, as simple as we are creatures of habits, right? I mean, we go home pretty much the same way. If we have 4 or 5 possibilities of going home, we get used to go home one way. And you go home anyway. Somebody tells me, if you go there all the way, you'll save 3 minutes. So, 3 minutes. I'm gonna do my own way. I like my own way, and that's it. You do your own way because we are creatures of habit. But then one day you get off the subway going home, and something in your mind to say, take a different way. Don't walk the same way that you do always. I would attribute that to an spirit because it's different, it's contrary for my lining of thinking, of my way of thinking, especially things that are habituals. That I would say, yeah, somebody is telling me to take a different way. For the good, for the better. I don't know. I like to believe this for the good always. Right, but well, it depends who are we have associating with. Might not be so much for the good. Okay, but it's different of my way of thinking. Is different of my habitual way of doing things. And now comes this fixed idea in my mind. Don't do this way today. Do it differently. To me, likely that's a spiritual thought being printed in my mind right now. Is an outside source. Um, very often our mediumship meetings, as I'm sure you have experienced as a dialoguer, that you finish having a conversation with spirit and then you're like, what? That actually come out of my mouth? Did I actually say that? That makes you pretty convinced there was a product of inspiration of our superior spirit for you to say things like that. Say, I'm far from being that smart. I'm far from being that capable. So I know there was a spiritual influence because it's beyond my abilities in those meetings. So yeah, I attribute that to spirit assistance there. But outside of that, no, nothing attributed to spirits. If not habitual, let's say that you're going, you lost, there's a passage in the desert, on the gospel, the guy was lost in the desert, and he can go right or left, and he chooses to go right, and going to right, he finds water. And you have two options here. Say, oh, how great I am. I'm so smart, I took the right decision. Or you can take the other option. Thanks to the good spirit who inspired me to take this side that led me to the water. I'll take the second, the further one. I was inspired by the spirit, good spirit who led me to the water. But was I really? Because it's 50-50, right? Right or left. I like to believe that in that 50-50, I was inspired to take the right one that led me to the water. But I cannot prove it, not even going to try to prove it.
I have a question.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, whether it's by the spirits or by not spirits, why is it relevant to know?
In which scenario, if let's say in a mediumship meeting, I mean it is relevant to have that certainty that I am associated with good spirits who will guide me, who inspire me, who will help me to have a conversation of high degree of moral content to that spirit that is beyond what I have to offer, that I need help in order to help that spirit, because I myself cannot do it. I have to have that degree of confidence that the good spirits are there to back me up, to help me out. Otherwise, I would not be doing this work. So that to me is important. If I habitually do something the same way all the time, and then come that inspiration that, don't take that, don't do this that like the way you always do today. To me, it's good to know that there is that kind of protection, that kind of spiritual system lead me to avoid me. Maybe there is a problem on my other way. Maybe there is a traffic jam. I don't know, when the spirits will avoid me from getting into some kind of trouble. And there is a degrees of humbleness as well in it. Like the guy lost in the desert, as the passage in the gospel, who attribute all the things that is good to him or herself, knowing that we are quite limited, that we had that spiritual assistant with us. But now that could go to the bad as well, depends who I'm associating with.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's that I assume the position but my case it's a very personal thing that I've been always being assisted. I've always been protected. So that's where I'm coming from, so I know, like I don't question that. It's there. I'm always assisted. That's my well, my experience, really my experience that I've been safe.
Yeah, I
So
don't think we have to question, and
exactly. So
maybe we don't have to question, but to have that reasonable understanding that, yeah, I make decisions on my own, I do things on my own, but I'm also assisted, I'm always guided. And that put a degree of humbleness that
yes, yes, that's true.
that true.
Yeah, I think at least for people that are trying to understand and work with mediumship, when you are in a protected environment, as Elmo always say, in a serious environment, serious work, everything that happens you can trust. You already know what's happening, but that mediumship doesn't stay there. It goes everywhere with you, and that's why importance of study, because you kind of start to feel and see and perceive things outside that environment. You need to know what's what, and if you are not imagining what you feel is yourself or is physical or something else and happen, and that line is very fine for you to understand when you are still working your way towards better understanding of everything. And that's why I was asking Elmo those questions, because sometimes I come myself walking by myself at home, and then I stop and I look somewhere in the house. I can see there's nothing, but there's this feeling, and there's a change of the vibration of my body. There's this chill in my body. Everything changes, even though I'm not seeing anything. And I we never know, but I'm a pretty healthy guy, so I can rule out all physical things. But again, maybe it's my mind playing tricks on me. But it's always good to study and ask questions and make sure that you get it right.
Yeah, you went way over. I need to stop, but yeah, I mean, having said everything that I said, I'm not saying they could not be spirits. They could definitely be spirits, especially someone who has um, unmoral mediumship, and we know that we are surrounded by spirits at all times. Someone with a great degree of sensitivity, be a moral stance of medium, may have those perceptions. The importance is not to jump quickly that it's a spiritual, it's a spirit first until proven otherwise. It's the other way around. It's it's something else, but not spirits until proven otherwise. And in your case, being ostensive medium, then no, it's important to speak with more experienced mediums that perhaps go to the same thing that are going through and see how they manage with those issues.
Thank you, Alma.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, let's make the final prayer, please.